Do you ever feel a sense of profound relief when you finally get to be alone? It's not that you dislike people, but social events often feel like a performance you have to endure. You might feel most like your true self only when the world finally goes quiet and the demands fade away. Society often praises the social butterfly, which can leave you wondering if there's something wrong with you. Let me assure you right now, there is nothing wrong with you at all. In fact, this deep need for your own space might be your most defining and hard-won strength. What if the reason you crave solitude is not a personality flaw, but a hidden role you were forced to play as a child? We are about to uncover that role, and understanding it might just explain everything. In a world that celebrates constant connection, choosing solitude can feel like a small act of rebellion. You have likely been called antisocial, a homebody, or been told you simply need to get out more. But your need for quiet is not a rejection of the world. It is a search for the self you had to put aside. The experience we are exploring today is a psychological pattern known as parentification. This is a term for when a child is forced to step into the shoes of an adult long before they are ever ready. In this video, we will break down the 3 common hidden roles that parentified children often play. We will connect the dots from those childhood experiences directly to your adult need for personal space. Most importantly, stick around because we will also show you how to turn this from a source of guilt into your greatest superpower. And that brings us to the core idea. So what exactly is parentification? At its heart, it represents a fundamental role reversal within a family structure. It occurs when a child is called upon to fulfill the emotional or practical needs that are normally met by an adult. This is not simply about a child having chores. It is about a child carrying the weight of adult-level responsibility. Psychologists have found this pattern often emerges when a parent is unable to cope due to their own deep struggles. This could be due to mental or physical illness, addiction, divorce, or even being overwhelmed by severe financial stress. The child, often out of love and a primal survival instinct, steps up to fill that void. They quickly learned to be the stable one in a sea of chaos, the anchor in their own family's storm. There are 2 main forms this can take, and you might recognize elements of one or even both in your past. The first type is known as practical parentification. This happens when a child handles the concrete, tangible tasks of running a household. They might have been responsible for making sure younger siblings got to school on time. They may have managed grocery lists, cooked nightly meals, or even helped interpret bills for their parents. The second and often more invisible form is emotional parentification. This is when a child becomes their parent's primary source of emotional support and regulation. They effectively become a miniature confidant, therapist, and mediator. This child learns to read the emotional temperature of a room with expert precision. They absorb their parents' anxieties, fears, and frustrations, often at the great expense of their own childhood feelings. Imagine a small child whose main job after school is to listen to their parent vent about work or their marriage. That child quickly learns that their own needs must be silenced for the sake of family stability. This is the hidden role we mentioned, the very foundation upon which a deep preference for solitude is so often built. Now, let's explore our first archetype that grows from this soil, the emotional caretaker. This is the child who effectively became a tiny, unlicensed therapist for their entire family. You might have been your mother's best friend or your father's only source of comfort. You were not just a child, You were the family's unwilling emotional support system. Your primary childhood skill was listening, not playing tag. You learned how to anticipate a parent's mood swing before it even fully formed. You could sense the building tension the moment you walked into your home. Your own report card or scraped knee seemed utterly trivial compared to the adult-sized problems you were asked to solve. You provided a constant shoulder to cry on, offered advice far beyond your years, and learned to say, "It will be okay," when you knew it wasn't. This constant emotional labor is incredibly exhausting for a developing brain. You were essentially working a full-time job as a feelings manager, with no pay and absolutely no time off. So, how does this history connect to your life right now? As an adult, social interactions can subconsciously feel like you are going right back to that old, unpaid job. You might find yourself instinctively trying to manage the emotions of everyone in the room. A friend's bad mood can feel like your personal responsibility to fix. A tense dinner party feels like a critical crisis that you alone need to de-escalate. Being with people, even those you deeply love, can feel like work because you are constantly unconsciously scanning for emotional data. Solitude, therefore, becomes the only place where you can finally clock out. It is the one sacred environment where you are not responsible for how anyone else feels. So, if you find yourself needing silence, it is because you spent years listening to everyone else's noise. Do you see a part of your own story in the emotional caretaker? But that is only one side of the coin. Another common role is our second archetype, the household manager. If the emotional caretaker managed feelings, the household manager was forced to manage reality itself. This is the child whose young life became a never-ending to-do list. You might have been the one who knew how to pay the electric bill, or made sure younger siblings were fed and bathed every night. While other kids were worried about their next spelling test, you were worried about whether there was enough food in the fridge for the week. Your childhood was not a time of carefree play. It was a sequence of responsibilities and deadlines. You became hyper-competent and fiercely independent because you had absolutely no other choice. You were, in effect, the project manager of your own small family unit. Think of a 10-year-old waking up early not to watch cartoons, but to pack lunches for their siblings so a parent could sleep. That child is learning responsibility, but they are also learning that their own needs for rest and play are secondary. They are learning that their value is inextricably tied to their productivity and their usefulness to others. Now, let's fast forward to your life as an adult. For the former household manager, solitude is not about escaping feelings, it is about escaping demands. Every social invitation, every text message, every "can you just do this" can feel like another task being added to your list. Your home becomes less of a house and more of a fortress against the endless world of obligation. It is the one place where absolutely no one is asking you to do anything. Your quiet time is a quiet rebellion against the constant, humming pressure of responsibility you have felt your entire life. Being alone is the only time you are not on the clock. Does that sound familiar? The good news is that understanding this is the first step to changing it. Now let's look at a different kind of pressure that creates a similar need for space. Our third and final archetype is the peacemaker. This child lived in a home that was filled with tension, whether it was overt arguing or a heavy, unspoken conflict. They took on the exhausting role of a tiny diplomat, constantly trying to broker peace between warring family factions. This might have been between your parents, between a parent and a sibling, or within the entire family system. You learned to be a social chameleon, changing your behavior and personality to soothe whoever was most upset. You became hyper-vigilant, always scanning the environment for the first sign of a disagreement. A raised voice or a slammed door were not just sounds, they were red alerts that required your immediate intervention. You learned how to diffuse arguments with a joke, or to simply make yourself invisible to avoid adding to the problem. You were the good kid whose primary goal was to never, ever make waves. Your own anger, sadness, or frustration was a dangerous luxury you felt you could not afford. The emotional cost of this role is simply enormous. It teaches you that relationships are inherently unstable and require constant, exhausting maintenance to prevent disaster. As an adult, you are likely to be incredibly conflict-averse. Even the slightest disagreement can trigger that old, familiar sense of panic from childhood. You might find yourself placating others or agreeing to things you do not want just to keep things smooth. Social situations are, by their very nature, filled with the potential for friction and differing opinions. For the former peacemaker, this makes every social gathering a potential minefield. Solitude, then, becomes a true sanctuary. It is the only place guaranteed to be completely free from conflict. In your own space, there are no arguments to mediate, no tensions to diffuse, and no peace to keep but your very own. If you recognize yourself in any of these roles and are ready to learn how to turn this history into a strength, consider subscribing for more content on building a life that feels authentic to you. Understanding the why is powerful, but the real question is, what do we do about it now? It is time to reclaim your solitude, not as a wound from the past, but as a superpower for your present and future. The first step is the reframe. Your hyper-independence is not a flaw, it is a scar from a battle you won on your own. That competence, that empathy, and that responsibility are incredible strengths that you can now direct toward your own well-being. The second step is setting the boundary. No can feel like you are letting someone down, but you are actually just protecting your own precious energy. Thank you so much for thinking of me, but I need a quiet evening to recharge. It is kind, it is firm, and it requires no further explanation or apology. Finally, the third step is to schedule the recharge. Treat your solitude like an important appointment with yourself that you cannot miss. Put it on your calendar, defend that time fiercely, and see it as essential maintenance for your mental and emotional health. This is not selfish. It is the most responsible thing you can do for yourself after years of being responsible for everyone else. So we have seen the caretaker, the manager, and the peacemaker. We have traced the lines from a childhood where you had to be the adult to an adulthood where you crave the quiet. Your preference for solitude is not antisocial. It is not a flaw, and it is certainly not strange. It is a logical and intelligent adaptation to a past that demanded far too much from you. Your need for solitude is not a rejection of connection. It is a testament to your own deep resilience. The very roles that exhausted you also gifted you with incredible empathy, profound self-reliance, and a deep sense of responsibility. Now you have the power to turn those gifts inward, using them to finally care for yourself. You learned to be alone to survive. Now you get to choose to be alone to thrive. If this video gave you a new way to understand yourself, please subscribe and join our community of fellow deep thinkers. I have a question for you, and I would love to see your answers in the comments below. Which of the childhood roles we discussed did you relate to the most? Sharing your story can be a powerful act of validation for others who feel the same way. Thank you for watching.